Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. I gave 18 years of my life to that airline. 18 years in the skies. 18 years spent crossing time zones, missing holidays, watching sunrises from the cockpit, and tucking in letters from my daughter into the logbook because I was never home to read them in person. My name is Alan Bishop. Senior Captain for Western Horizon Airlines, well, former captain, I guess. I still can't say that without it twisting something deep in my chest. I was proud of my uniform. Proud of the crew I built. And proud of the reputation I helped Western Horizon earn, one of punctuality, discipline, and above all, safety. But none of that mattered when Lyle Cranston walked into the company. He was some Harvard MBA type, mid-30s, slick hair and smoother spreadsheets. A cost-cutter in a suit. His official title? VP of Flight Operations. But everyone knew what he really was, Jeffrey Markham's lapdog. The new CEO's hatchet man. It was a Tuesday morning when it happened. I remember the exact time, 8:42 a.m. I was in full uniform, having just completed a red-eye from Seattle. Exhausted but satisfied, we hit our marks and the crew was flawless. That's when I got the summons. Captain Bishop, please report to the 12th floor conference room. That was odd. I didn't have any meetings scheduled. The room was cold, sterile. And waiting for me behind the table were Lyle, someone from HR I didn't recognize, and a sealed envelope. Lyle didn't even look at me when he said the words. Your position has been eliminated due to strategic restructuring. My ears rang. My mind tried to process what I was hearing. Elimination. After nearly 2 decades. After training more than half the captains on their current roster. After a spotless safety record, commendations from the FAA, and voluntarily flying through Christmas storms because junior pilots couldn't. Lyle continued with his robotic spiel, talking about my generous severance package and alignment with future cost efficiency models. His lips moved, but all I could see was the photo on the wall behind him, an image of the original Western Horizon crew. My crew. A younger version of me stood in the front, flanked by rookies I had molded into professionals. I tried to ask questions. I tried to understand. What about the instructors I oversee? The simulator hours? The new hires? Lyle blinked. We'll figure it out. Just like that, I was discarded. Not even given the dignity of finishing out my final rotation. They wanted the uniform back. Now. I left that office a ghost. The halls that once held my laughter, the briefing rooms where I'd debriefed with Catherine and Thomas, now felt like foreign territory. I walked through them in street clothes, holding my folded uniform like a burial shroud. And as I passed the pilot's lounge, someone called out. Alan. What happened? It was Thomas Wright, my former first officer. A man I had mentored from nervous rookie to seasoned captain. His face paled as I gave him the news. Then came Catherine Reynolds, chief instructor. Daniel, James, Elise, one by one, they showed up. Some had just landed, others were due to fly out. But they all gathered, eyes wide, voices quiet, trying to make sense of it. This is insane, Catherine said. You are Western Horizon. I tried to downplay it, even smiled. Guess I was just too expensive. But my voice cracked when I said it. And that was when something inside me truly broke. That night, I sat alone in my quiet kitchen, the severance envelope unopened on the counter. I didn't eat. Didn't sleep. Just stared at my flight log. 19,402 hours in the air. Not one incident. Not one formal complaint. Not one delay caused by my crew. And now. Tossed aside like used landing gear. The betrayal didn't stop at me. I realized that as I scrolled through group messages that night, crew rotations slashed, training hours reduced, veteran co-pilots replaced with cheaper contract labor. They weren't just cutting me. They were gutting everything I'd built. And still, part of me wanted to believe it was a mistake. That someone, somewhere would realize they had screwed up. That maybe Jeffrey Markham would reach out and say, "Alan, let's talk." But no. That call never came. Instead, what came next would change everything. Not just for me. But for every pilot who had ever trusted the sky to Western Horizon. And for the executives who thought loyalty could be replaced by numbers on a screen. They were about to learn that some crews don't fly without their captain. The hardest part wasn't the firing. It was waking up the next morning and realizing I didn't have anywhere to go. For 18 years, my mornings started the same: pre-flight checklists, weather reports, coordinating with the crew, briefing the co-pilot. Even on my off days, my mind was in the sky, reviewing training protocols, mentoring new hires, fine-tuning simulation drills. My life was structure. My identity was purpose. Now, I was just drifting. My uniform hung useless in the back of my closet, pressed and perfect, like a monument to something already gone. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the unopened severance envelope. It felt radioactive. Touching it would mean accepting that it was over. My phone buzzed again. Catherine. Catherine Reynolds. "Alan, you okay?" I didn't reply. What could I say? That I was sitting in my living room like a discarded relic? That I kept replaying Lyle's smug face over and over in my head, trying to understand how a man who'd never flown a single aircraft thought he had the right to dismantle what we built. That night I finally opened the envelope. The payout was decent, on paper. But tied to it was a non-disclosure agreement, a non-compete clause, and a waiver stating I couldn't, publicly or privately, disparage Western Horizon Airlines, its officers, or affiliates. I nearly laughed. They wanted me silenced. Bought off like some PR liability. But the laugh died in my throat when I saw the final clause, one that disqualified me from any future consulting roles in commercial training for 18 months. That was intentional. Lyle didn't just want me gone. He wanted me out of the industry. My chest tightened. This wasn't just business. This was personal. The days blurred together. Coffee turned cold on the table. Job alerts stacked up in my inbox, most of them garbage, short-haul routes for discount carriers, or startup charter companies run out of converted strip malls. I was too expensive, too old school, too vocal about doing things right. The pilots I'd trained tried to check in. Thomas, Daniel, Elise. Even a few junior co-pilots sent messages. But I didn't answer. What was I supposed to tell them? That I'd been cut from the very company I helped build? That my legacy was being erased in real time? No. I couldn't show them this version of me. Not yet. Then, one night, I got a voicemail from someone I hadn't heard from in years. "Alan, it's Harold Winters. Call me." Harold. The original founder of Western Horizon. The man who had personally recruited me from the Air Force all those years ago. A straight shooter. Believed in protocol. Trusted pilots to run the operation, not pencil pushers with MBAs. He had retired 3 years ago after his son, Jeffrey, took over as CEO. That shift was when the cracks started. But I hadn't spoken to Harold since his farewell party. I called him back immediately. "Alan," he said, "not wasting time. I just heard what they did to you. And I'm furious." I swallowed hard. Hearing his voice, one of the last men in the company I respected, nearly cracked me open. "They said it was restructuring," I said bitterly. "Bull," Harold snapped. "They want cheap. They want fast. But they don't understand that in aviation, cheap and fast get people killed." I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Harold understood. You built that training program, he said. That flight team. That reputation. And they tossed you like a spent battery. Jeffrey told me it was a mutual agreement. I could smell the lie through the phone. He paused. Then came the words that shifted everything. You ever heard of Skyward Global? I blinked. The charter outfit? They're expanding. Heavy into corporate routes. They need leadership. They need someone with your spine. I just got tossed out of an airline for being too careful. And that's exactly why they want you. Let me set up a meeting. Harold, I started, but he cut me off. You're not finished, Alan. You're just starting over. After I hung up, I sat in silence. Something had shifted. Not much, but enough. A breeze of clarity blowing through the fog of despair. I wasn't alone. Not completely. The next morning, I found myself driving. Not to an interview. Not to Skyward. Just, out. I stopped near the airport. Not at Western Horizon HQ, I couldn't bear to look at that building, but at a diner where pilots often gathered before early shifts. I needed coffee, and maybe, if I was lucky, a reminder of what I used to be. I didn't expect to find Thomas there. He spotted me instantly. Captain, he said, standing up from his booth. Don't call me that, I muttered. Screw that. You'll always be captain to me. I sat down. And for a long time, we didn't speak. Then he leaned in and said quietly, Catherine told us. About what happened. She's livid. She needs to watch her back, I said. They'll come for her next. They already tried, he said. Cut her simulator hours. Slashed her training staff. She's hanging on by grit. I nodded. That sounded like her. Thomas lowered his voice further. People are angry, Alan. You built something solid. And they're watching it collapse in real time. One of the junior co-pilots had a near miss 2 days ago. Turnaround time was too tight. Pre-flight checks were rushed. My stomach churned. That's how disasters start. Exactly. And we're flying blind now. No oversight. No support. Just pressure to meet numbers. I looked up at him. He met my eyes. We miss you, he said. I didn't know what to say. I just nodded and said, I'll be around. But as I left the diner, a thought took root in my mind. A dangerous, electric thought. Maybe I couldn't save my job. But I could save them. And maybe, just maybe, I could make Lyle and Jeffrey wish they'd never pushed me out. I wasn't planning to go back to the terminal. After everything they did, after the humiliation, the severance envelope, the way Lyle looked right through me, I had sworn I wouldn't set foot in that building again. But when Catherine texted me late that Friday night, I knew I had to. Catherine Reynolds. Something's wrong. Real wrong. You need to see this in person. Me. What kind of wrong? Catherine. The kind you don't email. I agreed to meet her at the pilot's lounge the next morning, early, before flight started to depart and the place turned into a revolving door of tired aviators and clipboard-wielding dispatchers. When I arrived, I didn't even get through the door before I saw the look on Catherine's face. Pale. Tight-lipped. Eyes darting like a coiled spring. She motioned me in quickly and pulled out her laptop. Lyle's been covering something up, she said without preamble. Something big. She turned the screen toward me. Take a look. At first, it looked like standard maintenance reports. Nothing unusual, until I saw the discrepancies. In the left column, original technician submissions. In the right column, what had been officially filed. They didn't match. Hydraulic issues downgraded from urgent to advisory. Cabin pressure anomalies marked as resolved without repair logs. And worst of all, maintenance intervals stretched out well beyond manufacturer recommendations. "You're kidding me," I whispered. Catherine shook her head. "This started about 4 months ago. Right after they switched to that new, maintenance management platform Lyle pushed through." She clicked a few more times and showed me the metadata. Altered timestamps. Edited logs. Deleted entries. "Who else knows about this?" I asked. "Thomas. Daniel. A couple others. We started connecting dots last week, but this proves it." "This is criminal," I said. "Submitting falsified maintenance reports to the FAA?" She nodded grimly. "It's not cost-cutting anymore, Alan. It's fraud." My mind was spinning. We had suspected Lyle was reckless. That he was getting safety protocols to meet quarterly numbers and impress the board. But this? This could ground the entire fleet. This could send people to prison. And suddenly, I saw it clearly, why they had forced me out. Why they buried me in legal clauses and non-competes. Why they wanted me gone quietly. Because I was the last line of defense. Because if I had seen this while still on payroll, I would have blown the whistle. Publicly. Legally. And they knew it. So they tried to muzzle me before I ever saw the rot behind the curtain. But they failed. I looked at Catherine. "We have to report this. FAA, maybe even the NTSB. Already started the process," she said. "But it's going to take time. They need multiple sources, chain of custody, document validation." "Let me help," I said. She gave me a strange look. "You're not even with us anymore." "Exactly," I said. "Which means they can't fire me again." We gathered the crew, quietly. Just the ones we trusted. 15 pilots in total. Every single one had logged anomalies in recent months, minor issues that were brushed off by dispatch or logged as resolved, despite no follow-up. One by one, they told their stories. One by one, they began adding documentation. It was like watching a dam crack. By mid-afternoon, the lounge looked like a war room, papers spread across tables, laptops open, highlighters marking discrepancies, timelines forming. And that's when Lyle walked in. His eyes went wide at the sight of so many captains and first officers in one place, huddled around a laptop. "Shouldn't you all be prepping flights?" he said, trying to sound casual, but there was an edge beneath it. He knew. Thomas stepped forward. "Not until we get some answers." Lyle blinked. "About what?" Catherine stood beside him. "Safety. Fraud. Falsified reports." I could see the flicker of panic, the way his mouth opened slightly, then shut. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. "You will," I replied. "When the FAA comes knocking." Lyle's face twisted. "You're not even an employee here anymore. I'm a licensed flight instructor, a former military pilot, and a decorated safety consultant. And I've got enough credibility in this industry to sink this company with one phone call." "You're bluffing," he snapped. Catherine smiled coldly. "Try us." That evening, I drove back home with a thumb drive in my pocket. On it were the original and altered maintenance reports, crew testimonies, and incident logs. It wasn't just evidence. It was leverage. And suddenly, despair was replaced by something else. A plan. That night, I made 2 calls. One was to Victor Chen, CEO of Skyward Global. The other was to the FAA's regional office. Both conversations ended the same way. "We need to meet. Urgently." The next morning, I walked into Skyward Global headquarters 15 minutes early. Not for a job interview. Not for a favor. I came as a man holding the detonator to a scandal that could implode a multi-billion-dollar airline. Victor Chen, the CEO of Skyward, met me himself in the marble-tiled lobby. His grip was firm, his eyes sharper than I expected. No fluff. No small talk. "Captain Bishop," he said. "Let's talk." Inside the conference room, I laid out everything: the altered maintenance records, the falsified logs, the evidence Catherine and I had compiled, the growing unrest among Western Horizon's pilots. Victor didn't interrupt once. He watched. Listened. Calculated. When I finished, he sat back, hands steepled under his chin. "What you're describing isn't just reckless, it's criminal," he said. "And if the FAA gets involved?" "They're already involved," I replied. "This is the kind of negligence that leads to accidents. Or worse, deaths." Victor was quiet for a moment. Then he leaned forward. "And what do you want, Captain?" I slid a folder across the table. "I don't want revenge. I want to rebuild. Safer. Smarter. From the ground up." Inside was a proposal, my vision for a modernized, safety-first training and operations program. I'd been refining it in notebooks and draft emails for years, waiting for the right leadership to listen. Victor glanced through it. "This is ambitious. It's necessary." He looked at me, a slow smile creeping into his face. "Let's do it. And let's take as many of your people with us as you can." That night, I was on the phone for hours, reaching out to every pilot, instructor, and technician I had mentored over the past decade. People I trusted. People who had integrity. Some were hesitant at first. Jumping ship wasn't easy. But once I told them the truth about the records, about the FAA investigation, and most importantly, about the new opportunity at Skyward, they didn't just agree. They rallied. Meanwhile, Catherine and Thomas were coordinating from the inside. We kept it quiet. Subtle. Pilots began reporting technical concerns more frequently, truthfully. Planes were grounded. Flights delayed. It wasn't sabotage. It was ethics. But to Western Horizon's new management, it looked like insubordination. Tensions rose fast. Lyle tried to get ahead of the narrative. He started issuing warnings, mandatory briefings, veiled threats. Catherine recorded everything. We had a timeline, screenshots, emails, incident reports. All of it was building towards something bigger. Then, the FAA called. They wanted a formal statement. I met with Inspector Lisa Brennan at a secure office offsite. Catherine had already uploaded the data anonymously through a secure drop, but they needed a first-hand source to validate it. I signed the paperwork. The floodgates opened. By the end of the week, the FAA issued a quiet freeze. Routine inspections increased. Random audits doubled. Suddenly, Lyle's paper fortress was under siege from all sides. And just as pressure was mounting, Skyward made their move. Victor invited every pilot I recommended for private interviews, discreet, professional, with relocation offers, improved benefits, and full training authority for instructors like Catherine and Daniel. 30 offers were extended. 28 were accepted immediately. I was at the center of it all. The architect of the exodus. It wasn't about payback anymore. It was about building a place where pilots could breathe, where training wasn't sacrificed for profits, where safety wasn't an afterthought, it was the foundation. And I could see the cracks forming in Western Horizon's shiny exterior. Lyle was scrambling. HR was panicking. Dispatch was understaffed. Flights delayed. Passengers angry. Investors twitchy. We hadn't even launched yet, and they were already bleeding. One night, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Harold Winters. "You made your point, Alan," he said. "Jeffrey's sweating. The board's calling emergency meetings." "Good," I said. "He deserves it. You've done enough damage to make your case." I'm not finished. There was a pause. Then make sure, he said carefully, that when you go in for the kill, you don't miss. I wasn't going to. Because the final stage wasn't just about taking people. It was about taking proof. And we had just found the last piece we needed. In one of the archived data logs Catherine pulled, she uncovered something new, an internal memo. Signed by Lyle. It detailed a directive to streamline reporting procedures to ensure consistency in FAA submissions. Translation. Cover up. In writing. And with that, the trap was set. We launched everything on a Thursday morning. The kind of morning when most passengers are rushing for flights, and most airlines are too distracted by delays to notice what's about to hit them like a precision strike. Western Horizon Airlines had 42 flights scheduled out of its Salt Lake City hub that day. By noon, over half had been grounded. And not one press release could explain why. It started small. Catherine filed an official internal safety concern, citing discrepancies in simulator training for newer co-pilots. Daniel followed with a maintenance complaint on his assigned aircraft, grounded it for secondary inspection. Thomas refused to sign off on his pre-flight due to irregular checklist data. Each move was justified. Each was within FAA rights. And each triggered delays. Lyle responded the only way a corporate coward does, by sending aggressive emails, summoning pilots to compliance reviews, and threatening HR consequences. But it was too late. The virus was already in the bloodstream. By midday, pilots were texting us. Thomas, 2 more just joined. 2243 and 3176 both grounded. Dispatch losing it. Daniel, flight ops asking why we all suddenly care about minor checklist issues. Catherine, Lyle is in the lounge screaming into his phone. It's beautiful. We weren't on strike. That would have been illegal without union authorization. No. We were simply being good pilots. We followed every procedure, every checklist, every safety protocol, to the letter. And when you do that in a company built on cutting corners, you grind it to a halt. Meanwhile, the FAA had begun its formal audit. They didn't show up in black suits. No sirens. No public spectacle. Just quiet investigators, asking pointed questions, requesting access logs, cross-checking reports. And they found the memo. The one Lyle wrote, the smoking gun. That single document turned everything we'd gathered from concerning to criminal. Lyle tried to hold it together. He stood in a staff meeting 2 days later, tight-faced and shouting about rogue pilots and procedural overreach. But the crews weren't listening anymore. Because they weren't just employees. They were witnesses. And we were moving faster than he could contain. Then came the headlines. FAA opens investigation into Western Horizon over safety record discrepancies. Anonymous sources claim maintenance logs were falsified. Pilots quietly exiting amid company turmoil. Jeffrey Markham, CEO, and Harold's son, went radio silent. But behind closed doors, he was panicking. How do I know? Because Harold called me again. They're calling emergency board meetings. Asking me to return. Trying to spin it as isolated incidents. You going back? I asked. No, he said. But they want you. I laughed. They fired me, Harold. And now they're learning the cost. The same day, Victor Chin called. Alan, we're ready. The training center is finished. Simulators are in place. Contracts are signed. He paused. Catherine just accepted our offer. Daniel too. 29 pilots in total. I stood in my driveway, phone to my ear, heart thudding with something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Not the weak kind. The kind you build things on. What do you say? Victor asked. I say we fly. That afternoon, I met the team at Skyward's new training facility. The room smelled of fresh carpet and opportunity. 6 state-of-the-art simulators. Emergency mock-ups. Classrooms ready to shape the next generation of pilots, our way. No shortcuts. No fake metrics. Just real training. Catherine walked in carrying a stack of manuals. She looked like herself again. Strong. Sharp-eyed. Focused. Ready to build something better, she asked. I nodded. Let's make this the standard. Behind us, the pilots, our pilots, began unpacking gear. Flight bags. Logbooks. Headsets. One by one, the ones they tried to replace walked through those doors. And for the first time since they took my wings, I felt like I could breathe again. Across town, Lyle was trying to stop the bleeding. He couldn't. More flights were cancelled. Passengers were furious. The press was circling. And the FAA had frozen all aircraft pending inspection. But the real blow hadn't landed yet. That would come tomorrow. When the public learned the truth. I was standing in Skyward's new control room, watching the flight board light up with our latest routes, New York to Zurich, San Francisco to Tokyo, Miami to Sao Paulo, when my phone rang. Harold Winters. His voice was calm, but I could hear the edge under it. You watching the news, Alan? I turned to the TV mounted on the wall. Victor Chen had just stepped into the room, saw me staring at the screen, and clicked the remote. There it was. Breaking, FAA investigation grounds 100+ Western Horizon flights. CEO Markham silent amid allegations. Harold spoke again. The board just forced Jeffrey to resign. Effective immediately. I blinked. You're serious? As a heart attack. And Lyle? Gone too. No severance. No PR statement. Just gone. The anchor on TV continued. FAA documents indicate a coordinated cover-up of maintenance discrepancies, including falsified safety records and extended service intervals. At least 3 senior employees are under formal investigation, and more may follow. With over 340 flights cancelled in 3 weeks, insiders say the company is hemorrhaging revenue and struggling to retain staff. I could barely process it. Jeffrey, the arrogant CEO who tossed me aside like trash, was now out of a job. And Lyle, the smug cost-cutter who told me my compensation package no longer aligned with their growth model, had been escorted from the building by security. Victor turned to me, the barest hint of a smile tugging at his face. Looks like your little operation worked. But the twist didn't end there. Not even close. 2 hours later, I was called to the front desk at Skyward. A man was waiting. Well-dressed. Polished. Nervous. He introduced himself as Malcolm Prescott, interim chairman of Western Horizon's board. Mr. Bishop, he said, clearing his throat. We'd like to request a conversation. Immediately. I didn't move. Victor joined me. He didn't say a word, just crossed his arms and raised an eyebrow. Prescott continued, we recognize that recent decisions may not have reflected the core values of this company. In light of the current crisis and your history with Western Horizon, we're prepared to offer you full executive authority over operations and training, to rebuild what's been lost. There it was. The reversal. They didn't just want me back. They were begging. For a long moment, I said nothing. Then I looked at Victor. He nodded slightly. This was my moment. I turned back to Prescott. You had your chance, I said quietly. You watched them destroy everything I spent 18 years building. We made a mistake, he replied, hands out. A grave one. We need someone the pilots will follow. Someone with credibility. And you think I'd come back because you're desperate now? I asked. No, he said. We think you'd come back because you care about aviation. About the people. He wasn't wrong. But he was too late. I took a deep breath and said what I'd been waiting months to say. I'm exactly where I belong. Prescott swallowed hard. Then, would you consider a merger? Strategic cooperation. Shared training oversight. Anything to stabilize our future. It was almost painful to watch. But it wasn't my job to rescue them anymore. They had fired the lifeboat when the ship was still afloat. Now they were sinking. After he left, Victor turned to me. You sure you don't want to take it? Rebuild Western Horizon from the inside? I shook my head. I don't want to fix what they broke. I want to build something better. From scratch. Victor smiled. Then let's get to work. That night, I stood at the edge of Skyward's tarmac. Our newest 787 Dreamliner taxied into place under the lights, flawless and gleaming. Catherine was in the cockpit. I watched her execute a perfect landing, reverse thrusters kicking in smooth as silk. The crew disembarked to applause. Inside the hangar, our new hires were arriving, flight crews, technicians, engineers. All of them had stories like mine. Disrespected. Pushed out. Undervalued. Now. They were the foundation of something new. Not built on fear. Built on trust. As I turned to head back into the terminal, my phone buzzed again. Catherine. You hear the latest? What? Alta's stock just got delisted. I froze. She continued, market confidence collapsed. They couldn't meet route obligations. Lawsuits incoming. Their name's toxic. I let out a long breath. They did this to themselves, I said. And we're just getting started, she replied. 6 months later, I stood once more on a tarmac. Not at Western Horizon. At our airfield, Skyward Global's new flagship terminal. The sun was low, gold spilling across the runway like a blessing. In the distance, the Skyward Dreamliner I helped spec from the ground up eased onto the runway, engines humming a sound I'd come to love again. In the cockpit, Catherine Reynolds, my old chief instructor, now chief of international operations. Behind her, Thomas and Daniel were leading cross-Atlantic routes, mentoring the next generation of pilots under the new program we built together. And me? I was back in uniform. Because as part of my executive agreement, I demanded one clause above all others. I still get to fly. Every time I step into that cockpit, I remember where I came from. What they tried to take from me. What they couldn't. The headlines had long since moved on, but the fallout from the Western Horizon scandal remained. The FAA imposed record-breaking fines. Multiple executives were banned from holding positions in any FAA-certified airline for life. Investigations found that dozens of maintenance logs were intentionally altered to pass inspections. It could have killed people. Jeffrey Markham. Gone. Facing civil liability and criminal inquiry. Lyle Cranston. Disgraced. Last I heard, he was consulting on efficiency for a low-tier logistics startup in Nevada. Western Horizon's brand was so radioactive, they tried to rebrand under a new name. Didn't work. Airlines are built on trust. And no one was going to trust a company that nearly let greed cost lives. Meanwhile, Skyward was growing faster than we anticipated. 6 new routes. 42 new pilots. 2 leased aircraft from Western Horizon's liquidated fleet, restored under our standards. And our safety record? Perfect. One afternoon, while reviewing simulator footage in the training center, Victor walked in. He didn't say anything at first. Just watched. Then he said, "You know what the press is calling you?" I looked up. What? The man who grounded a giant. I laughed. Catchy. It's more than catchy, Alan. You reminded people that integrity still matters in this business. Later that week, I received a letter from a young pilot. A kid I'd met once during a seminar years ago, back when I was with Western Horizon. He had been nervous, struggling in flight school. He said I encouraged him. Told him not to chase shortcuts. Told him to earn the uniform, not just wear it. He passed. And now? He was applying to Skyward. I held the letter for a long time. Because that was the thing no spreadsheet could measure. Legacy. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about one company's downfall. It was about rising from the ashes. About building something worth standing for. And when people asked me how I survived being betrayed after 18 years, I told them the truth. I didn't just survive. I flew higher. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.